This conference will now be recorded.
But also we'll be able to have a video recording and a sound recording of it as well. My name is Piers Clark. I'm the chairman of the ISLE group. I know that on this chat it seems to call me Peter Miller. That's simply because my computer was once logged in by Peter Miller and I've never been able to change the GoToMeeting registration. It's one of those minor frustrations. But I'm Piers Clark. I'm the chairman of the ISLE group, and the purpose of the next 15 minutes is to try and share with you some of the key learnings that have come over the last week from the WhatsApp group that was started on, I think, Monday afternoon. So there's been an enormous amount of chat on that group. And I guess I'd like to start by saying thank you to everyone for the time and the openness that people have shared and collaborated on this group at this difficult and unprecedented time. I'm going to try and keep this to 15 minutes, which obviously means that I'm going to be going at quite a high level, but that means that if anyone wants more detail or more information, please don't hesitate to contact me, and we can obviously go into a greater level of detail afterwards. So just to put a few things into context, hopefully you can see my slides. Here we are 4 days in. We've got a group that's got 98 different organizations from 30 countries. You can see that map of the world there, and the number of utilities that are coming from each territory. We started this with it just being water companies, but we now call it actually Water Plus, because there's a range of other infrastructure providers who have joined the group. For example, Irvia in Ireland, who do the gas networks, and Stansted Airport here in the UK. We're holding this webinar today because it was the first time that we thought we could put we could gather the information to share. Next week, we're proposing to move it to Thursday, and the reason for that is that obviously in the Middle East, the weekend is Friday and Saturday, not Saturday and Sunday, and actually at this precise time, it's the daily prayers. So we're going to move this to Thursday, so that we can accommodate some of our friends and colleagues in the Arab countries. And I guess that might also be nicer for people in Australia and that part of the world, in that it won't actually eat into your Friday evening. Please feel free to circulate this presentation and this link to any of your colleagues. And if you want to add people to either the invites for the webinar or the web chat, either contact myself, or you can see here the details of my colleague Charlotte DeWitt. So let's jump in. This first slide is a lot of these things are common sense, but we've sort of captured them here. In the water sector and COVID-19, there's a little bit here about dissemination, and persistence in the environment, which I think we're probably all very familiar with now. We know that you get it from being coughed and sneezed on, or through touching somewhere where there's water droplets. And we are generally all aware that, you know, it appears that colder environments, it's more resilient. What was interesting was that the exchange around removal. And so it's these bullet points at the bottom of this slide that I'd like to draw your attention to. Earlier this week, we had some research was shared. Sorry, could I ask that you put yourself on mute? I've got a little bit of background noise here coming through. So if you're not on mute, could you put yourself on mute? Is to draw your attention to what's happening on removal. At the beginning of the week, we seem to have some fairly strong statements that the virus would not survive in wastewater treatment. I'm acutely aware that overnight, there's been some research that's been shared and published, shared on the WhatsApp from the Netherlands, which actually counters that. So this is obviously an area that we've got to keep an eye on and watch how it evolves, because that will have a significant impact on us in this in the water sector. Moving now to the themes that have come up during this last week. we've drawn them out here. There's some early lessons from Italy, which on Monday, that was when this group started, the sort of opening line was, well, Italy's in Europe, Italy has been the first point of contact for the virus, the first area where we've had to deal with it in a significant way. And so we wanted to try and draw some early lessons from that. And then there's been some issues around staff management, some things on well-being and solidarity. And then what we're proposing in this deck is to share with you the links to some of the resources, so that rather than you needing to wade through the web chat, we've captured in this presentation links to the documents, the key documents that you might want to revert to. And we've also plucked out a couple of recommended reads, and we've even summarized those for you. And then I'm going to finish by just covering the unanswered questions and sort of pressing issues that I think hopefully maybe next week we'll move on to. So early lessons from Italy. Again, a lot of this is common sense, but it's kind of good to have this reassurance that the things that we all thought were common sense are happening. Is that timing is paramount. The message that came out of Italy is do not delay, move quickly to enact your plans. And you can see, I won't read the words here, but I've shared the key statements that came from Marco Fantozzi and also Sonia Bozza. Sonia's words, I think, were particularly useful down here on respect to social distancing. They've done the solo work of operators, which actually is some really simple guidance here. In the morning, they start from home with the vehicle, their tablets and their smartphones and all their equipment, and that the resupply at the warehouse is all staggered. Now, it's obviously common sense, but it requires quite a dramatic change to most utilities operations to adapt to that. But of course, it's then enabling everybody to be much safer. So early lessons from Italy: move fast and keep your move fast to adopt your new operational practices. When it comes to staff management, again, I think we're all aligned, hopefully, on our number one priority is keeping our staff and colleagues safe. And you can see here that across every part of the world, from Ireland to America to Australia, everyone's embracing the working from home opportunities and just having only the essential teams working. There's then, we've shared here the statements that people have given us around maintaining social distancing and keeping 2 meters apart, closing shop fronts to help reduce exposure for both customers and staff. So yeah, that's again a significant step forward, which I think perhaps in North America, there's still a degree of people believing that those sorts of things are not yet necessary. And I think the experiences that we've seen elsewhere in the world are saying that that's not the case. We've also put in here a bit of a response back from Ervia on the gas industry, which basically shows the similarity of the challenges that they're facing versus the ones that we're facing in the water sector. Moving on to well-being and solidarity. Obviously, with lots of people working from home and without the social distancing, there is a whole with the social distancing measures. I think everybody's concerned about both the physical and mental well-being of their staff, and so there's been some nice suggestions around how that can be addressed. And Anglian Water shared their toolkit on well-being, which is one of the documents that we've put a link to here, which is also about just making sure that everyone's got healthy habits. There's a little bit of motherhood and apple pie about this in terms of, do we really need to tell our staff that they've got to go out and exercise and they need to eat properly? But the answer is yes, we do. We need to remind people, because these are unprecedented times where we can't be too cautious on this. I particularly like this point that Ervia had used, where they made available their car parks so that the health service staff could use it, because they're obviously situated near the hospital. And there's a lovely moment there where the water sector, just by thinking a bit broader around how can we impact our wider community, here they had the opportunity to help some of their neighbouring businesses, and in doing that, helping the wider community. And I encourage all of us to look for those sorts of opportunities. So those were the main themes. It was around those three main themes to date. It's been on operational staff, well-being, and sort of the early lessons from Italy. On terms of documents, so here's a list of the key documents you might want to refer to, and we split them into the daily go-to documents, things that you might want to put in your favorites on your web searches so that you can sort of jump to them quickly and keep up to date with what's going on. And then there's some interesting articles and blogs here, and you can read those at your leisure, but you can see the titles there. And then there's some documents that we haven't been able to get links to, but if you contact us by email, we can then forward them on to you. So they're not for technical reasons. Then we've not been able to make them as readily accessible as the other documents. But if you're interested in any of these documents, please just send me an email and we'll forward them on to you. I'm aware I've got only another 3 or 4 minutes to go. So if we come to the 2 recommended reads, so of all the documents we've read, there were 2 that we thought were most important and were particularly informative. So the first here is from the London Business School, and it's on the economics of the pandemic. And you can see here it's basically split into 4 parts, covering the science, the health policies, the economics, and the macroeconomics. And we believe it provides probably the most comprehensive and easiest to read story. There's also a link here to the lecture so that you can go straight to the document should you want to. And then the second recommended read is very specific to the water sector. And this comes from the site operating procedures that were shared by Anglian Water. This we thought was incredibly insightful and useful because it drilled right down to specifics that you can do within the water utility. So again, I'm not going to read the words, you can read them at your leisure, but this we thought was a very good document to refer to. There's been some issues that have been raised, that specific questions that have been raised and don't appear to have been caught by anyone. So the first was came from Wessex Water, and has anyone come across novel alternatives to the face masks that offer an equivalent level of protection? And this is obviously going to become particularly important over the coming weeks and months, because the face masks are going to become a resource that's incredibly precious. So if we can find, if anyone's got any insights into alternative PPE that could be used, that would be really good to understand. And then Southern Water asked a question around that they're refining their strategy for the provision of bottled water during incidents. And this is really about thinking ahead, that trying to second guess what the challenge is going to be if and when we lose some of our supply. So the drive-through water stations being one way that maybe you could avoid that personal contact. So that felt like an area that if anyone's got any experience of those sorts of issues, it would be brilliant to share. I'm aware I'm at my 15-minute time limit. I know that was high level. I hope you found it useful. What we'll do is we will PDF this presentation and put it on the WhatsApp group. If you want a copy via email, or for whatever reason, if it's easier for you to do by email, just email me at piers.clark@ileutilities.com. I will circulate. I've sort of been holding back on sending the email invites because the group has been growing on a daily basis, and I didn't want people to be getting endless updates on the invites. But we will be doing another one of these webinars next Thursday at 7:30 GMT, which is this time now, and at 14:30 GMT. The 2 webinars are obviously exactly the same, they're just dealing with the different time zones. Thank you for your time. I will now pause. If anyone's got any questions, and if you're happy to stay on for a few more minutes, then now's a good time to have the questions session. In which case, okay, it doesn't sound like anyone's got any questions to raise. In which case, can I wish you all a happy, and healthy weekend, and I hope to hear from you, speak with you again next week. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.